Before there were borders, there was the river. The Douro, ancient, relentless, 2,000 kilometers long, born in the mountains of central Spain, carving its way westward through granite and schist until it finally surrenders to the Atlantic at Porto. And in its valley, on both sides of a border that the river itself ignores, human beings have been making some of the most extraordinary wine on Earth for over 2,000 years. To understand this wine, you must first understand this land. And to understand this land, you must first understand that it should not exist. The Douro Valley sits in one of the most extreme agricultural environments on the planet. The river has cut a canyon hundreds of meters deep through some of the oldest rock in Europe. Schist, granite, slate, stone that shatters heat in summer and holds warmth through the night. Summers here are brutal. Temperatures regularly exceed 40 degrees Celsius. Winters are bone cold. Rainfall is scarce. To survive, the vines send their roots impossibly deep, cracking through the rock itself in search of ancient moisture and minerals. This struggle is not a tragedy. It is the secret. Stressed vines produce small grapes. Small grapes mean concentrated flavors. And those flavors, mineral, complex, alive, end up in the glass. The Douro begins its life in Spain, in the highlands of Castilla y León, at over 2,000 meters above sea level. Here, the river is known as the Duero. Same river, different language, same soul. On the Spanish side, the river shapes a wine world that feels ancient even by Iberian standards. The region of Ribera del Duero sits at around 800 to 1,000 meters altitude on the Castilian plateau. The air is thin, the light is sharp. The winters are so cold that frosts can still strike in May. And here, one grape rules above all others, Tempranillo. Called Tinto Fino, or Tinta del País in this region, it is Spain's most noble red variety. And here, on the Duero Plateau, it reaches perhaps its most powerful expression. Ribera del Duero produces wines of extraordinary depth and structure. The extreme diurnal temperature variation forces the grapes to retain freshness and acidity even as they develop massive concentration. The result: wines that are simultaneously powerful and elegant, dark fruit, tobacco, cedar, earth, and behind it all, that unmistakable mineral signature of high-altitude limestone soils. Some of the world's most sought-after wines come from this plateau. Vega Sicilia's Unico and Pingus represent an argument that on this harsh, unforgiving plateau, something transcendent is possible. But follow the river west, cross the border, and everything changes. In Portugal, the river enters its most dramatic chapter. The Douro Valley, Alto Douro Vinheteiro, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And standing on its terraces for the first time, you understand why. The Portuguese Douro is not one thing, it is three. Moving from west to east, the valley divides into the Baixo Corgo, the Cima Corgo, and the Douro Superior. Each sub-region has its own microclimate, its own character, and its own relationship with the river. The westernmost zone, Baixo Corgo, receives the most rainfall and produces wines that are lighter and more aromatic. Moving east into the Cima Corgo, the heart of the valley, rainfall drops, temperatures rise, and the wines grow in density and complexity. Here, on the schist slopes around the towns of Pinhão and São João da Pesqueira, you find the greatest port wine quintas in the world. And further east still, the Douro Superior stretches toward the Spanish border. Harsh, almost desert-like, producing wines of extraordinary concentration. And the soil here is unlike anywhere else. Schist, dark, iron-rich, crumbling metamorphic rock, covers most of the valley. It drains beautifully, reflects heat onto the vines, and forces roots to descend sometimes 5 meters or more in search of water. This is why Douro wines taste like they do. The earth speaks through them. In the Douro, the harvest is still largely done by hand. On these impossibly steep terraces, some with gradients of over 60% by machines cannot reach. Human beings do what the land demands, and what the land demands is everything. The Douro is home to an extraordinary diversity of indigenous grape varieties, over 80 approved for port production alone. But a handful define the valley's soul. Touriga Nacional, the king, intensely perfumed, violet, black plum, graphite, and richly tannic. Touriga franca, the diplomat, more generous, more immediately aromatic, lending elegance and volume to blends. Tinta Roriz, the Portuguese name for Spain's Tempranillo, adding structure and dark spice. Tinta Barroca, softer, rounder, contributing perfume and colour. And Soussault, dark and acidic, adding depth and longevity. Together, these grapes produce wines of almost biological complexity. Wines that evolve across decades in bottle. Wines that remember the heat of the summer, the cold of the winter nights. But no story of the Douro is complete without port. Port wine, fortified with grape spirit to stop fermentation and retain residual sugar, was born from a trade relationship with England in the 17th century. British merchants found in the Douro Valley something extraordinary, something that survived the long sea voyage. Over centuries, port evolved into one of wine's most sophisticated categories. Vintage port, declared only in exceptional years, develops extraordinary complexity: dried fruit, leather, cedar, and spice. Tawny port, aged in small barrels, takes on a completely different character. Oxidative, nutty, smelling of dried apricot. To drink aged tawny port is to drink time itself. To drink vintage port from a great year is to experience a wine that has spent 30, 40, sometimes 50 years becoming exactly what it was always meant to be. Back at the border, back at the gorge where the river decides to be a frontier. On the Spanish side, in Ribera del Duero, small producers make wines from varieties like Juan Garcia and Bruñal. These are wines of the canyon itself, wild, mineral, forgotten by the world. The Douro doesn't care about borders. It carved this valley long before Portugal and Spain existed as nations. What the Douro gives us is something wine can rarely offer in such concentrated form. A sense of place so profound it becomes indistinguishable from flavor. Today, winemakers are still learning from the same river, the same stone, the same sun. Some rivers divide. This one unites, under the banner of the most human of all endeavors, the making of something extraordinary from almost nothing. This is the Douro.